Good evening and welcome to the final Inside Government for the fall 2019 semester here at KU Community College and broadcast on Spectrum, Verizon Fios, the Regional Media Access, better known as ARMA, as well as WDWN, the college's radio station 89.1. I am your host, Guy Cosentino. We are delighted to have as our last guest on Inside Government for the semester, City Manager Jeff DYGERT, who has, since his last appearance, had a city budget approved, had the North Division Street Bridge opened, saw the state's list of downtown revitalization initiatives released this summer, and last week saw the public announcement that Major League Baseball might close down 42 minor league baseball teams, including the Auburn Doubledays, which is now owned by the city of Auburn. And of course, we've got some breaking news that we'll talk about in just a moment. We'll talk to him all about this, as well as a new addition to City Council and more. Welcome back.
Thanks for having me. Delighted is maybe an overstatement.
It is, and I am, because you're a good guest, and you do not. If you don't want to talk about something, you'll make it clear to us, and that's okay with me.
I will try to address anything.
You're not as blunt as the next guest we will have.
Oh, okay.
So I'm not sure anybody's as blunt as Senator DeFrancisco. Maybe Brian Cole was. So let's we previewed this last week, and we talked to the mayor about it as well. Can you tell us where we are with Major League Baseball? And we'll get into. So Adam Winslow, it's just broken in the last hour or so, is stepping down as your general manager. Let's get to that in a second.
Okay.
And how you're going to operate that. The bigger issue right now is Major League Baseball and what they want to do.
So where we stand, we are a franchise owner, right? So that is.
When you say we are a franchise owner, you mean the city of Auburn, and you are the point person for them.
Correct. I am the president of Auburn Community Baseball LLC.
Better known as Mr. Lucky.
Yes, or the ultimate authority in baseball terms.
Okay.
But back in the 80s, we came into ownership of the franchise when the Houston Astros essentially walked away from the franchise. So we never really pursued it as a city that I'm aware of, but it was gifted to us in a sense.
We took it over, let's be blunt. This was before me. I found out,
right.
We were talking beforehand, I found out the second day I got elected, or sworn in as mayor, that we owned it. Nobody knew this. It had been accepted for bad debts from a previous city manager, and when Major League Baseball back then had decided that you're going to upgrade all these facilities, you're going to do so, or you're going to lose your franchise.
Correct. And
Leo Pinckney, Vince Klein, Charlie Lynch, Chuck Savage, they all came in. I don't think I had an assistant at that time. My boxes weren't unpacked, and they said good news, bad news. So the good news was you own a team. Bad news is you got to build a facility. And we were lucky enough at that time that then Governor Cuomo, who had a minor league baseball background, had done a match for those communities. So Auburn didn't have to pay the full freight. I think it was 2.7 at that time.
Right.
Now it's a different circumstance. This is about not keeping teams in a new facility. This is about getting rid of franchises.
Right, and there is some discussion about facilities within that, and in that particular conversation, we're in pretty good shape based on the partnership with KU Community College and the recent investment in the facility. So I feel confident that we are in really good shape as far as the facility goes. Unfortunately, we are a franchise owner, and we have to follow the league rules, the minor league baseball rules. We're part of the New York Penn League within minor league baseball, and the current discussion is the contract that exists between Major League Baseball and minor league baseball for player development and things like that. So,
and that ends at the end of next season.
Correct. So that's a point that I want to try to stress to everybody. The 2020 season will go on. We're planning
Which
for
makes
the
it all the more
2020
confusing
season.
with Adam Winslow announcing that he's leaving today.
Correct.
Does that mean you're shutting down? You're not shutting down.
Not at all.
Okay.
Not at all. The show will go on. We do not know at this point, and on a regular basis, I am included in update conversations with either the New York Penn League or minor league baseball, or both at times, about the status of negotiations. But
so they're in negotiations right now. So no decision has been finalized necessarily.
That's my understanding.
But there is a likelihood that this is going to be implemented.
I don't know about that.
Okay.
I think that might be a more strong statement than what I've been led to believe at this point.
If they keep minor league baseball and they keep Auburn, that we're all moot. So that's all right. But let's say that it is the worst case scenario. So let's work through some of that. the winter meetings are in San Diego in a couple of weeks.
Yes.
Are you going, representing the city?
I
Or
pulled out.
representing-
I actually was planning on going, and I pulled out, and I've got people going in my place.
Okay.
I've got things to do here, and a lot of this is up in the air right now, and I really don't suspect at this point in time. A few weeks ago, I thought maybe they'd have this all hashed out by then. They
So you don't think that winter meetings are going to be... So you have city staff going to...
I
San Diego.
have double-day staff.
Double day.
Going
Well,
to
who's
that.
double-day staff now? So, okay, so let's talk about Adam Winslow for a second. Let's get that out of the way.
Okay.
So Adam Winslow, who's a general manager, he had served earlier in the decade, came back in, I think, 2017. He's resigned to take a new job.
Correct. So about 2 weeks ago, Adam contacted me and notified me that he had some other opportunities he would like to pursue. We've taken that time for the last 2 weeks to put together an interim plan on who's going to do what and how that will all roll out. We're still working on that to
So when
iron
does
out
he
the
leave?
details. Friday is his
This
last
Friday.
day there. Correct. That's his
Okay.
last official day, and you know, it's been a cordial relationship all along. It's been a cordial separation, and he's still available to provide some guidance to the remaining staff on an as-needed basis.
So where is he going?
That would be a question for Adam Winslow, not
Okay,
for
all right.
Jeff DYGERT.
You don't necessarily know.
I actually do not
Okay.
know, and I'm glad I don't know because I
Knew
wouldn't
you
want to
did
feel pressured into giving it up. So, you know, we wish him well and appreciate the things he's done over the last few years to keep that franchise going and to make some changes and to modernize some things.
So he
and
lost his 2 assistants last year, took different jobs last year. So what are you going to do in the interim?
So in the interim, we have 2 assistant GMs. Bob Scarborough is going to move up to be the interim general manager. For the last couple seasons, he's been learning the ropes and is quite capable. David Lindberg is also going to take on some additional
He's
duties.
sales
So,
right now.
yeah, so we're going to basically take Adam's duties and divide them up between.
And both
those.
terrifically nice guys.
Absolutely, and
So-
they know the system, they know the franchise, they know our local community members and partners and things like that. So we're going to be okay.
So I know apparently too much about baseball, which is to everybody's humor around me.
I feel your pain.
You feel because it is funny that the guys who have no interest in baseball have been the ones who've had to.
Well, I've had to learn a lot,
Learn a
and you
lot,
know
so.
it's not, and that's what I think people in the community might be interested to understand is that it's certainly much more than the game. There's a lot more that goes
There's a
on
business.
behind the scenes. It's a business, and it's not a business like many other businesses that are out there. It's not a simple, you know, we produce. I hate
Widgets.
that term. I knew you were going to do it.
Yeah,
I
I
was
know.
trying to think of
Trusses.
something else. Sure. You know, we create this product and we sell it, and here's a profit
Pizzas
margin.
or Bob?
Whatever.
Oh, you do
It's so different. So it's
So one of the things I do know is that winter meetings have traditionally been the place where teams look for general managers.
correct.
Obviously, you're not going out there, and it's tough if you don't know that there's going to be life after 2020.
Right.
That's going to be tough to use
So
this.
you know, there's a cost to send a body to San Diego for a week, right? And that's my perspective on it. You know, I'd love to go to San Diego if I was just vacationing.
In the winter.
Right, if I was just vacationing. But it truly is work when you go to those things, and there's meetings, there's workshops, and there's all those things going on. But at this point in time, to spend that money, I think is
For a search.
is irresponsible at this point because we don't know where we stand. Once we know where we stand, if we decide to move in a direction where we're going to potentially put somebody else in as general manager, we have other means to do that.
But what I was going with, if for example, this is rubber stamped by Major League Baseball and Minor League Baseball that you don't have a team in 2021, there is a chance that Mr. Scarborough and Mr. Lindbergh would be while they might be interim today, they may be
Correct.
those positions for the long term.
Absolutely. Yes.
So, are there any? What is the community doing? When I say community, this being City Hall and the Double Days, to try to stop this.
Unfortunately, there's not a whole heck of a lot we can do. So there's been
So there's nothing the city
there's
can
been an
necessarily-
organized campaign to try to get local elected officials on board and regional elected officials. So our federal representatives, our state
Yeah,
representatives.
but unless they're going to go in there and investigate baseball, there's very little they can do.
Well, there's definitely a lot of activity happening at the federal level.
I understand that,
them,
but
so-
they'd have to really go into Major League Baseball's status,
Yes.
and that hasn't been done a whole lot.
Right. So
Okay.
it's an interesting dynamic. It really is.
So there was a little bit of, we say that one of the oddities is you are one of the only municipalities. I think you're the only
one of three, the only one in New York,
New York State.
two others in Ohio.
So you own the facilities. You own the facility and the franchise. So there have been discussions in the past about selling the franchise.
Correct.
Any regrets that you didn't pursue those discussions more?
There are some other franchises that have been for sale during that time, and they haven't moved. So I don't know that we would necessarily would have had a sale. That would be a lot of speculation at that point.
So a couple of years ago, Governing Magazine did a piece on the valuation of minor league facilities, or I shouldn't say facilities, of baseball teams.
Yeah.
And I think I sent your president, because you weren't city manager at that time, I sent, I think, Mayor Quill the story, and I think minor league baseball teams were valued at that point about between $4.5 million and $6 million. Is that the same valuation you have in your own mind?
No,
right?
no pun intended, but for a minor league team about our size and our population and our attendance and things like that, that's what I've been led to believe.
You're in the ballpark.
Yes.
Is that what you were
Yes,
going to say?
yes.
Okay. So if you go through that, I heard laughter in the control room just with that alone. So if they go through, and again, this is a long process, if they go through, forget the facility again, will Major League Baseball or Minor League Baseball pay the city for the value of that franchise?
It does not seem likely.
So it's a loss. That valuation, it disappears.
Right, but if you look at it from the perspective of we inherited the franchise, it's not like at some point
But somebody
in time
had put money into a franchise.
somebody else, right? A private enterprise, and one of the other franchises that's privately owned from a group of investors or something like that. I suspect.
Well, that's where
they're
I'm
gonna
going
be
with
on
this,
the hook.
because I remember back, I'm assuming some organizations that either have agreements with the municipalities for facilities or have gone
Yes.
bonds or financing, they could be out a lot of money out of this whole thing.
I've heard stories of several municipalities that are getting ready to break ground on facility improvements. I've heard stories about municipalities that are getting ready to break ground on brand new facilities, multiple millions of dollars. So if this happens to go through and they eliminate the 42 teams or a portion of those areas where the teams are lost, yeah, there's typically a municipal impact as well, because there's a facility that
Right.
was built out to house this
So
activity.
you luckily have, and I don't say this as a person associated with the College Foundation, I'm not a college employee, but you obviously have done something in the last year that you're very proud of, and the college is very proud of, with turf.
And that was a unexpected relationship that occurred that couldn't have come at a better time, really, for this.
So right now, the college is going to use it about 8 months, 9 months out of the year. Baseball is 3 to 4 months, give or take a couple weeks
Right.
here and there. Do you see the city, if you lose the franchise, see the college asking the college to take over the operations all year, still making the reimbursements?
I think
SUNY?
it's too soon to really speculate on that. There are other potential opportunities. There's been discussion about other leagues. We've been approached by other leagues already, even prior to all these discussions. So there are these smaller leagues that are out there that exist.
What's this dream league?
It's just kind of an offspin of things, and just another level, and it's a different franchise.
But
essentially.
that could be used here as well.
Potentially, but there's costs involved with all of those things, and for the most part, aside from educational type facilities, whether it's high schools or colleges or something like that,
So you may have some, what I was looking at is having the college take it over so that you would reduce city people power, manpower, in operations, cleanup, and all that other stuff that you still are required to do because you own the facility.
We own the facility, and for all intents and purposes, we always will.
So I want to go back, in case you were to get money for this franchise, where would you put that money? Would it go to the general fund? Would you pay off debts? Would you invest it into a fund just to protect Falcon Park?
My thoughts had always been, and certainly this wasn't, it may have been discussed with the council, but we'd never really adopted anything because it wasn't, right there in front of us as a need. But my thought with that was to try to continue to reinvest it in recreational facilities one way or another.
I'm going to ask Senator DeFrancisco about an editorial that ran about him. A couple of weeks ago, there was an editorial this week or in the last couple of days, that criticized the Double Days for not coming out sooner with a game plan or a statement. Any thoughts on that?
Well, again, it's...
And I only ask that because you're...
certainly very easy from anybody on the outside, and I would probably do the same thing. If I didn't know anything about what was going on, I'd think, wow, they're trying to keep something a secret or not divulge what's going on, and there's got to be some ill intent there. But the reality of it is we are a franchisee, and we have to follow the rules of the governing organization, which is the New York Penn League and minor league baseball.
And how you communicate certain things?
And how we communicate and what we discuss. So, you were mayor for a time, and like when you're in contract negotiations, typically there's an order for both sides not to discuss publicly what's going on in those negotiations.
I always figure don't say anything because you're only going to get in trouble.
Yeah, well, that too. And there's so oftentimes
only when it comes
there's
to
good
labor
reasons.
issues.
So, we were really not informed of anything to sit here with you today. I don't know all the details of those discussions. I don't know where they stand today as compared to about a week ago, and it's unfortunate. It puts us in a situation where we feel a little bit powerless, and but there really is no information to share at this point, and we'll be told. I kind of liken it to if I owned a McDonald's franchise and somebody up in...
When the McRib will be coming out.
Yeah, I have no control over that. I have no control that we switch from Coke to Pepsi or Pepsi to Coke if I was that McDonald's franchisee.
One last question just on Falcon Park, nothing to do with baseball.
Sure.
You talked, you were very proud, you said it came at a fortuitous time, the relationship with the college and with the city. The governor had put together these consolidation programs where municipalities that saved money were going to get reimbursed for some of that cost. Has the city or the college received any of that money yet?
That won't happen yet. So the way that program works is the project had to essentially take place between January 1st and December 31st of this year. Okay, so it was written into the plan last year to take place and be implemented. So you won't get anything
until the next...
Right, so sometime in December, possibly January, we will write a response or a report to New York State to say we have completed this project that we presented in 2018, and here's what we feel the value of that project is. And I have heard that New York State has paid out on some of those shared service agreements.
So how much do you think between you and the college would get?
Well, that's it's going to depend on how the state allows us to do the formula on what the expenditure is.
What would you hope?
Well, best case scenario, if we
but
could look and say that.
And best case is not necessarily going to happen, but what would you hope that, because of what you and the college did, what do you think the benefit will be to the community financially?
The absolute top end would be what we were able to save the college, right? So we were able to, the college...
Several million dollars.
Okay. So, potentially north of $10 million.
Right.
That's...
By not building, go out this way because that's where it is, but out that door and where there had to be major excavations going in.
And we will make that pitch. We'll make that pitch for that big payout. And in the end, what we may see is what the annual savings is. So possibly what the annual payment would have been on a $12 or $13 million facility compared to what it is on this. And it's a one-time payment. It's We did not design the project around the shared services. Always thought that's been important. If we've got good projects, they should stand on their own. And if we can add value through the shared services, that's even better.
So do you see first quarter, second quarter, maybe getting a check?
I bet you it's going to be a little longer than that.
Any worry that now the governor just announces he's got a $6.1 billion shortfall?
That question's come up on several occasions, and these things were actually funded in the prior year's budget. So the funding for these things, it's my understanding, has been locked in.
And it's only Albany, so we'll see.
They'll find it somewhere.
So
apparently.
believe it or not, there was an election 3 weeks ago. So when we booked this, baseball was not even on, because it was even before the 2-week notice you got. This was not even on the agenda. So there was an election 3 weeks ago. Any surprises?
No. It's it's election season.
All right.
Some people, you know, some of the terms for what goes on.
Right. Well, all right. So let's talk about transition. Yeah. All right. So have you met with Councilor-elect LaCastro?
I have not. I was not around last week, so that's kind of when things were finalized. I wasn't around last week, and this.
Are you preparing your staff? Do you have a plan to meet with him?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And are you from a transitional point of view? Because there's a lot to catch up. I mean, I think all the candidates who spoke who had been elected say, you know, the first year is a learning curve. So what are you doing to have your staff prepare Councilor LaCastro?
Well, some of the first things we need to do is just, what we would typically do and go over council rules and regulations and rules of procedure and how all those things work, and then we'll do some sort of an introduction to staff and avail our staff and our departments to.
So if he wants to go and see what's going on in the landfill, what's going on at AFD, APD, he can do that.
And what we've also done over the last year or so is we have essentially a running list of major projects that we're working on. So we've got a spreadsheet.
We're going to get to that list at some point.
Yeah. Well,
that was why you were supposed to be here.
Your list is nothing like our list, and we've got. I think the last I looked at it, we've got about 143 major projects going on, and they might not be shovels in the ground type projects, but they might be administrative projects, all sorts of things. So there is a lot going on that.
So
you don't necessarily see.
You may not know this. Was he at City Council last week?
I believe so, yes.
So is he being invited into executive sessions
to
start that transition? So can I ask you a non-Auburn election issue? And this is about Troop. So traditionally, Troop has been opposed to expanding the footprint of the landfill. And one of the things you're under pressure to do is create this transfer station. There is a new town supervisor that's been elected there, Eric Ridley. Are there any thoughts of going back to Troop to see if you can expand the landfill? Are you is that bus left the station?
We've passed that, and you know, one of the issues with expanding the landfill was not only not having property available directly to us. The DEC process could potentially take years. The cost associated with that was many, many millions of dollars, and the cost benefit of that really didn't work out for us.
So you said 143 projects. Let's ask about one. Where are you on the transfer station?
Transfer station's under construction right now. So
and where's that being built?
It is being built at the landfill. So if you recall, there was a building there where you can take your recyclables, right? You can drive through that. Behind that will be the transfer station.
Another project you're working on is this new public safety building on Seminary with DRI funds. What do you have in the bank now for funds that you can put towards this, and how much is it overall?
So Christina Selvik, our Director of Capital Projects.
She was here on Election Day.
Yep, was very good. And a couple of years ago, almost 3 years ago now, she was able to secure $2 million in funding from the DEC for a relocation project. The DRI has allocated $1.2 million to that project, and we are hopeful that with having a relationship with Cuyahoga County for an emergency operations center to be co-located in that building, that we can also dip into some of the shared services funds that are out there.
So overall, how much so do you have an agreement with the county yet?
I have an agreement with the county, yes.
Okay.
Signed it today.
Oh, you did?
Yes.
Okay. So what does it outline?
Basically says that we are going to cooperate on the establishment of an emergency operations center in this new facility.
So of the monies that you have, so count whatever you're getting shared services, how much is the overall project?
We're looking at probably about a $10 million project.
How much do you have in the bank if you counted in shared services and all that?
If we've got that, then we're getting close to that 50% mark.
Okay.
So I've got 3.2, maybe 4.2.
When do you think you'll start?
We need to go through a couple more council sessions for various things, like the State Environmental Quality Review Act, and we have to approve
seeker
bonding and all that. And then we'll get ready to go. We've put out an RFP for...
Do you think summer of next year you'll start?
I think that if administratively the project moves along through the administrative process at
there's no
the
roadblocks
planned speed, then we could very likely be putting shovels in the ground during the summer.
And how long do you think it'll take to build?
We've been told between 12 and 18 months.
And so the mayor has mentioned when he was here last week was that there's the possibility you might move City Court over to Market Street where the current firehouse is.
Right.
Is there anything else you would move in there?
There's potential for a couple of other functions possibly that might fit in well with that general thing, whether it be probation or parole or some of those things, but those are discussions that
is still the plan on the upper floors to possibly have apartments or offices?
It may end up being offices. If we go with courts, it may be part of their offices or
But there was some talk at one point about putting an RFP out to see if we could get a private developer.
Yeah, if we were going to privatize it. We've been having some difficulty. We're under a significant amount of pressure from the Office of Court Administration to provide them a new facility.
Oh, how much
or expanded facility.
In the end, how much will this, do you think this will save the city money by moving over to Market Street?
Well, it may save us in the fact that we wouldn't have to build a completely new building.
Two quick other questions. I got lots of stuff that we can talk about, and we can have you back in February if you're willing to do it, but North Division Street Bridge is open?
It's open, yes.
Is it finished?
They laid down the top coat of asphalt today.
I was there last night at midnight. There was arc lights all over the place.
So they've done several days of 24-hour operations. They poured sidewalks today. They hydro-seeded today. So it is getting to be pretty much wrapped up.
And when do you start State Street Bridge?
That's still an unknown at this point. So when we get into these things, especially when there's state involvement, oftentimes what the state does is they'll come in and they work with the adjacent property owners to get the legal right to be on the property and do those things. So they're still working through that process.
Any idea how much it'll cost?
You had to ask me that. I forget where that one came in at.
Why I was going with this is
it's going to be less expensive than North Division because it's a shorter bridge.
And straight.
And yes, and there's not all these other encumbrances and problems.
The reason I asked this question is that you have GRI money going into public safety. You've got North Division Street Bridge, State Bridge. Do you not do a project, and you did the big road program, 1.8 miles in Auburn.
Right.
Do you not do a road program or any of these projects without money from Albany or Washington?
Occasionally,
but can you afford to?
There's no way we could pull off a bridge project. There's no way we can pull off a $6 million bridge project without really hitting the local taxpayers. And obviously when we deal with the state and federal government, there are strings attached. But if not for dealing with those strings, then we'd have massive tax increases. And the reality of it is, it's everybody's tax money. Our local taxpayers are paying state tax and they're paying federal tax.
Yeah.
And
I'm not going to ask about back-end parking, nor using any windfalls you get from the double days to time the lights downtown.
There you go. Okay.
Our guest has been Auburn City Manager Jeff DYGERT. I want to thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
It's great to have you in the studio. I hope you come back in the spring for a budget update and talk about all the other things we didn't do, the other
146 things on the list.
So we'll return in just a moment with a new edition and a final edition Beyond the Front Page for the fall 2019 semester here with former New York State Senator John DeFrancisco talking about his new book, Never Say Never. Today ends our fall 2019 season here at the college, both for Inside Government and Beyond the Front Page. We'll return in the spring of 2020 with a number of shows, including asking guests like Jeff DYGERT to be back here, as well as the mayor and other public officials. We'll having discussions on public health, especially lead paint, smoking and vaping, The building of a new Veterans Memorial, the Auburn Regional Media Access, ARMA, will have a show on that as well as possibly a Democratic Congressional Primary Forum, as well as the 2020 Auburn School Board Forum. As we plan for those shows, we'd like to let you know that you can send us your ideas at cozguytho@aol.com, or you can send us email or mail by snail mail to Inside Government, 141 Dunning Avenue, Auburn, New York, 13021. I do want to thank the students up here who are getting ready for finals. They do a great job for us, as does the staff. I'd also be remiss if I didn't thank Professor Steve Keeler, Mike Morano, Doug Brill, and Jeff Sesniak, who make this show possible and work with our students up here. I'm Guy Cosentino for KU Community College. I want to thank you for watching. We hope you have a great Thanksgiving this week, but otherwise have a happy Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, Merry Christmas, and a Happy New Year, and we will see you back in February.